The ending of Jujutsu Kaisen is absolutely brutal, with most of the sorcerers losing their lives and the main cast ending up permanently scarred. But what if Yuji could go back? What if he got a second chance to save everyone he lost? Today, we're diving into what would happen if Yuji Itadori was reborn with all his powers and memories intact. Before we begin, there's a crucial detail about Jujutsu Kaisen lore I want to cover. In the original story, reincarnation is absolutely real, as we see with cursed objects and binding vows that transcend lifetimes. Souls can persist beyond death in this world. Our story begins with a tragedy even worse than the original ending, as Yuji and the surviving sorcerers desperately battle against Sukuna. By this point, there's actually no hope for humanity. As Megumi's soul is fading, the merger is beginning, and 3 sorcerers and Yuji are relentlessly attacking him. In a desperate move, Sukuna forces a binding vow onto Yuji, trapping his consciousness while taking full control of his body. In the original timeline, Yuji was saved by Megumi's will breaking through, and Todo arriving to snap him out of his despair. But in our story, Megumi gets there too late. The merger is complete, and Yuji's human soul can only watch while Sukuna stands victorious, the world descending into chaos. As Sukuna's cursed energy completely dominates his body and his humanity slips away, Yuji makes a desperate wish for just one more opportunity to save them all. Suddenly, Yuji wakes up not as a teenager, but as an infant in his grandfather's arms. Now, obviously, all his memories don't come flooding back at this point. But as he grows up, Yuji begins to relive his past through dreams and recollections. By the age of 10, all of Yuji's memories are perfectly in place, and he's sure that he's been sent back in time and reborn into his old life. But at the end of the Jujutsu Kaisen story, Yuji wasn't just a strong version of himself. He had accessed techniques and knowledge from hosting Sukuna for months. This time, he's born with an innate understanding of cursed energy and naturally possesses the ability to perceive souls and use Black Flash at will. He's become a near-perfect vessel with complete control from the start. In the final battle during the Shinjuku Showdown, Yuji's greatest setback was that his techniques were still developing in real time. But in this timeline, he has time to perfect his curse technique and soul manipulation abilities. And his first step is to convince his grandfather to teach him about their family history. Yuji Itadori is puzzled by his grandson's request, but entertains it regardless, walking Yuji through everything he knows about their bloodline. But this is where the psychological weight of rebirth kicks in. As Yuji matures, he realizes that his grandfather's death is approaching. Remember, Yuji wasn't even an adult at the end of the original Jujutsu Kaisen story, so having to pretend to be a normal kid while carrying this knowledge is almost unbearable. After Yuji's grandfather passes away, he makes the decision to avoid joining any sports clubs and instead focuses on training his cursed energy in secret. He convinces himself that staying under the radar will keep curses away from his school. But this is a critical mistake, because Yuji quickly learns that changing events creates massive ripple effects he can't predict. Yuji hides his supernatural strength and continues practicing cursed energy manipulation in secret. But these measures aren't enough to hide from cursed spirits. Sukuna's fingers still exist in this timeline, and curses are still drawn to Sugisawa High School. The original date where he swallowed the finger has passed, and Yuji relaxes, thinking that he'll eventually join the sorcerers for the final battle. But one evening, when he's at the hospital visiting a classmate, a special grade curse strikes, targeting multiple students who stayed late at school. By the time Yuji returns, it's not only his club members that have been attacked. Multiple students who are in the wrong place lie dead in the hallways. Yuji enters the club room to see his senpai dead, while Megumi Fushiguro desperately fights the curse alone. When Satoru Gojo arrives to investigate the attack, he encounters Yuji, who begs him to let him help save the remaining students. The strongest sorcerer tries to tell Yuji to stand back, but is shocked when the boy actually manages to keep up with him. You see, Yuji already has perfect cursed energy control at this point, and has mastered his soul perception, meaning that he's on a different level from even grade 1 sorcerers. Gojo takes Yuji to Jujutsu High, hoping that the school will help Yuji unlock his full potential without relying on Sukuna's power. When Yuji trains at Jujutsu High, the instructors realize that he doesn't need basic cursed energy training, and instead help Yuji perfect his divergent fist and soul-targeting strikes. Yuji also masters the ability to suppress his presence completely, which makes his fighting intent impossible to detect. By this point, Yuji is on a level where he can take on special grades. So, the Cursed Womb Arc and early missions are barely a challenge. Yuji's first encounter with a special grade goes differently this time. Instead of nearly dying, he systematically dismantles it using soul manipulation. He knows exactly where to strike to destroy its core. The Death Painting Womb's arc still happens, but this time Yuji is smarter about using his knowledge from the future. Instead of revealing all his abilities, Yuji lets events proceed as usual, and instead focuses on warning Gojo about Kenjaku's plan. Using his knowledge of the past, Yuji convinces Gojo that there's a curse user who can body hop, and that they need to prepare for the worst. He warns him specifically about Prison Realm. When the Shibuya incident begins, Yuji is so overprepared it's almost unfair. Using his soul perception, he can sense Mahito's presence before the curse even reveals himself. The psychological battles that once broke him down now have no effect because he's lived through worse. The fight against Mahito almost ends up being completely one-sided, as Yuji has absolutely no trouble targeting his soul from the very beginning. Nobara doesn't have to sacrifice herself, and by the time Aoi Todo arrives, the situation has been completely taken care of. However, this is where things get complicated. Because Yuji has been handling everything so well, Gojo hasn't been sealed yet. But Yuji knows that if Gojo remains free, Kenjaku will change his plans entirely, possibly creating an even worse timeline. So, Yuji is forced to make the hardest decision of his life. The Prison Realm trap still happens in this timeline, but it's not a complete surprise. Gojo knows it's coming because of Yuji's warning. But after speaking with Yuji and Principal Yaga, they agree that sometimes you have to let fate play out to prevent something worse. The implication of this is pretty serious, because Yuji is forced to let his mentor get sealed once more. Think about it. Kenjaku initiates the Culling Game because Gojo was sealed. If Gojo somehow avoided the seal, Kenjaku would simply escalate to the merger immediately. The world would end before they could stop him. So, while Yuji watches Gojo approach Geto's body, he simply cannot escape fate as the Prison Realm activates before them once more. Gojo fights the mental battle inside Prison Realm, and Yuji is forced to watch from the sidelines for the greater good of humanity. Heading into the Culling Game, we face a pretty serious problem, because Yuji has been handling everything on his own all this time. He never developed the same bonds with Nobara and Megumi through shared struggle. That's important, because their teamwork and trust was what allowed them to overcome impossible odds. Yuji realizes he's been so focused on preventing deaths that he forgot to build the relationships that made them strong. The Culling Game proceeds with Yuji leading his colony with overwhelming power. He saves Panda, rescues Hakari, and dominates every opponent with ease. The critical moment comes when they begin planning to enter Megumi's colony, because Yuji knows that Sukuna will try to take over Megumi's body. This is where Yuji's knowledge becomes crucial. He pulls Megumi aside and explains everything about Sukuna's plans, about the binding vow, about how in another timeline Megumi lost everything. Megumi is skeptical at first, but Yuji's specific knowledge of his sister, his technique, and his deepest fears convinces him that something supernatural is happening. The two form a plan. They'll make it look like Sukuna's plan is proceeding normally, but Megumi will be prepared to resist from within. This fight is much more complex because Yuji has to carefully balance letting events unfold while protecting Megumi's soul. When Sukuna makes his move to take Megumi's body, Megumi is ready. His soul doesn't sink into despair because Yuji warned him. Sukuna gains the body, but in complete control, with Megumi resisting from inside and Yuji attacking from outside using soul-targeting strikes. They create a scenario where Sukuna is constantly fighting a two-front war. This changes everything, because now they don't need to wear Sukuna down over months of fighting. The battle against Sukuna becomes a race against time. Kashimo still sacrifices himself, but his attack creates the opening they need. Yuta and Yuji coordinate perfectly, with Yuta using his copied techniques, while Yuji targets Megumi's soul specifically to separate it from Sukuna. When the Shinjuku showdown begins, the sorcerers are better prepared than they could have ever been before. The battles are still brutal, because Sukuna in Megumi's body with 10 shadows is a nightmare. But they've prepared additional strategies based on Yuji's knowledge. Yuji knows about Mahoraga's adaptation, about Ajito, about every Shikigami Sukuna will summon. The sorcerers work in perfect coordination and avoid many of the fatal injuries that were dealt to them in the original timeline. Higuruma's execution sword still shatters. Choso still sacrifices himself, but the deaths that can be prevented are prevented. Sukuna senses that something's wrong. It's as if they're predicting his moves, but by the time the King of Curses catches on, it's far too late. Yuji has spent months targeting Megumi's soul specifically, weakening Sukuna's hold bit by bit. Todo arrives with his new technique. Yuta has prepared his backup plan. And this time, when Yuji lands his final Black Flash, it's not just a physical strike. It's a soul-severing blow that he's been building toward this entire fight. Sukuna is ripped from Megumi's body and forced back into his original form, separated from the 10 Shadows technique. Without Megumi's technique, and with his cursed energy depleted from fighting a two-front war, Sukuna falls to the combined assault of the remaining sorcerers. As the cursed energy disperses, the sorcerers rejoice. But Yuji can't help but feel disappointed that he couldn't save everyone. The sorcerers have freed humanity from the King of Curses' reign of terror. And with this victory, their chapter comes to an end as well. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss another JJK video. Stay balls deep, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.